we now have domestic debt restructuring imposed on us. We are told that unless you do that, the foreign bondholders will not accede to restructuring. And
well,
nobody...
That's the usual case, no, Doctor?
No, it's not the usual case. Now you have to listen to just this very important point. When foreign bondholders buy Sri Lankan debt, it's on the presumption that it's risky. Why? Because the government does not print dollars. It prints rupees, but it doesn't print dollars. When a Sri Lankan bank or Sri Lankan company or an individual buys rupee debt, it's on the presumption that it's 100% risk-free. Now, the foreigner has said, you must treat us equally, even though the two asset classes are totally different. And that is why the foreigner gets far more than the person buying Sri Lankan debt. Again, my son did a quick calculation. If you held 5-year ISB, International Sovereign Bond, from 2014 to 19, you would have got on average 6.25% a year. If you held a 5-year treasury bond, that's a Sri Lankan rupee denominated bond, you would have lost 4% a year. Now, that is why we pay, because the higher risk, the Sri Lankan government doesn't print dollars, that's why we pay foreigners a premium. But now they're telling us, no, forget all of that. You also have to take a haircut because we are taking a haircut, even though the two asset classes are totally different. And the question I ask is, why aren't we fighting back against that? Why aren't we pushing back? This is ludicrous. You shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be imposing this on us. What they're trying to do is push us further and further because we're desperate, you know? And the fear factor is always there. If you don't do this, we're not going to continue supporting you, you won't get the second tranche, etc., etc. So we do everything, you know? It's the monkey jumping for the peanuts, basically. You know, we'll do anything that it takes. And I think, you know, we're not only undermining the democratic essence of our system, but we're abrogating our responsibility to the people of the country by doing this. Because one of the consequences of the domestic debt restructuring is, for the first time ever, we're going to make domestic debt a risky asset. And the minute you do that, let me just give you the example of what's going to happen in the coming global recession. So from now on, remember, we're going to say the government can default on debt. It can default. We're coming into a global recession. The central bank is not going to be allowed to buy domestic debt. The government will have to run a budget deficit. It has no choice. When it runs the budget deficit, immediately its credit rating is going to fall because it won't have the resources to pay that debt. That means interest rates will rise in the middle of a global recession. So we can't run the deficit we need to run, and interest rates will rise. And we're doing all of this because we're so frightened that the IMF will pull the plug and say, well, sorry, if you don't agree to domestic debt restructuring, then we're not going to give you the second tranche. But meanwhile, actually, we're destroying ourselves, you know, and it's going to be far more damaging than not actually continuing with the IMF agreement.
Thank you very much, Dr. Howard Nicholas. Some important thoughts. Quite interesting, isn't it?
Quite an eye-opener.
Quite an eye-opener. Thank you very much, Dr. Howard Nicholas, for joining us this evening on the show.